Hello everybody, my name is Tiffany. I'm the Tipsy Artist, and today we are doing a beautiful painting called the Family Heart, and I'm going to show you the model here. This is our beautiful model. Isn't it lovely? That's our inspiration. This is a little bit bigger in size. We do have all the materials that you need on our website for this really sweet little 11 by 14 size. We sell lovely painting packs to go with this. All right, and then all the supplies are down below, so I'll give you links to everything you need to know, and all the supply information is listed below. But we're going to go ahead and get right into it. I'm going to be getting started with a larger brush here, one of my flats, and I'm going to be mixing up kind of a pretty light neutral gray for the background. I'll go ahead and start with that. So I'm going to go ahead and take a nice big dollop of the white, and then just a teeny tiny amount of the black. So just barely press into the black, mix that in, and that will give me a really pretty light gray. And then I always make sure I have lots of white nearby as well. So that'll come in handy later when I go ahead and alternate that in back and forth. And then you can keep it with just cool tones of gray and white, or you can add a little bit of warmth to it with just a tiny amount of the gold in there too. So you can mix that in and that will warm it up a little bit. All right, so I am going to go ahead and start to sweep this onto the background, just back and forth. And as you can see, we have all of our tracing done in advance because we always have awesome templates that we work with. So that comes in really handy. And then I really enjoyed using Sharpie to begin with because it does peek through the paint. Even as the paint dries, you'll see that Sharpie image basically come right back through, and that preserves my image. And so it's just a really kind of a fun little cheat that I like to use in my painting, so it really comes in handy. So I've got that in the background that will peek through to help me see where my shiplap comes in later, so that's really awesome. And we talk all about all of our templates down below, so you can check that out later. Now as I start to get in and around this shape, then I'm going to change how I hold the brush, and I hold it more on the line edge so that I can make a nice thin line, and I'll do my cut-in work that way and work that all the way around that shape, just like that. And then I'll go ahead and then just come right directly out from that shape out to the outside here. And then as I mentioned, we've got a little bit of that white nearby, so I like to kind of push that through randomly and create little highlights there in the background. I'll just sweep that back and forth. So I'll go back and forth here from, if you have to do a small area, I go ahead and use the brush more on the line edge to get detail work. And then when I'm working into a larger area, then I can work it back out by holding that brush more over to the side parallel to the canvas to get better coverage there over the surface. And I'll just keep working this in back and forth. And then remember to come back in with some of those little sweeping horizontal strokes. And I could be a little bit sloppy with some of this because I know that I'm going to come back in and fill it in with colors that will actually be quite a bit darker over the top. So as I'm cutting in around these little roses and leaves, I'm not too worried about being really precise in there. I'm a little bit sloppy with it. I'm just more concerned about getting really good coverage here with the background. So I'm going to continue to sweep this back through here in the background. All right. So that is absolutely lovely. We have our background all done. So it's a beautiful light gray with little highlights of white. You can kind of push those back through. And then also you can do just teeny amounts of gold if you like the look of that, and just kind of randomly place those through the background. All right, so there's our beautiful background out. All right, so now we're gonna go ahead and do the center of the heart. And so for this, I just want a really light cream color. So I'm going to be using, call this my little mama brush here. And I'm going to be mixing up a pretty large amount of the white and then just a teeny amount of the gold. So a lot of white, little amount of the gold, and that will give me a really pretty light cream color. And then I'm going to go ahead and just sweep this into the inside of the heart and do that large section, just a light cream. Yay! All right, so that's our next section there with all the cream worked in. This area here, I'm going to go ahead and do a really pretty, kind of a slate color. So let's talk about those colors really quick. So this slate color is going to be a nice dollop of white, and then we're going to pick up a little bit of this cobalt blue color, and then just a teeny tiny amount of the black. So I just barely, let me give you a visual on that. I just barely touch into the black, just a tiny amount, see, very small. That's really about all I need, because it becomes very overpowering. And then that cools off that light blue, and it pulls it to a slate color, which just adds a really nice amount of gray in there. A little bit of gray to that blue and white. And then I'm going to sweep this all the way across with just a teeny amount of the white, just sweeping back and forth in there. And when I come in next to the line edge, I change how I hold the brush using the edge side. So you'll see I'll use that here, just like that. And then I'll sweep in towards the center, and then I'll change how I hold the brush, flat side to the canvas. All right, then if you want, you can add little bits more of white that will kind of streak through there. And I will just lightly apply those over the top, and then just do a really light drag with the side of the brush. All right, beautiful. Okay, so now we have all of our background color in for the big shapes. Next up, we will do our beautiful roses. And so I'm going to come in with, it's the same brush, same size. So I need to go ahead and wash it out in our bucket of water nearby. And then I want to be sure and dry it off really well. Dry off the handle, also the brush here. And then let's go ahead and mix up this really pretty, I'm going to start with some really pretty pink colors here to begin with. So I'm going to start with some red and then a little bit of white. Mix those two together, and that will give me a really pretty light pink as a base. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and push this into those rose shapes. And in the beginning here, they definitely look a lot like little lumpy circles. So if that concerns you, do not be concerned, because that is actually a good thing. Because I'm going to give you a pattern later that will make it look more like a rose. Once that pattern gets in there, it looks really awesome. Then I'm going to do one more pink up here at the top. And again, let's do one more there. Now I'm going to do a little bit of a light purple. All right, so So I'm going to use that same brush, rinse it out, dry it off, and I'm going to come back in with some purple and then a little bit of white, and then that will give me a really pretty lavender color. And then I'm going to go ahead and fill in this one right here. All right, very nice. Okay, and actually, while I've got this purple, let me go ahead and I'm going to do a couple of little purple feathers down here too. So basically the main shape of that feather, it's a lot like a leaf. And so I'm just going to go ahead and fill that in. And it feels a lot like making a parentheses over the top and then one on the bottom that they both connect. And then you just fill that in, and then that creates our little really pretty feather effect here. And I'm going to do one more right in through here. All right, got a great start now. Next up, I'm going to do the leaves. I want to make sure and get all my background color in first. All right, so I need some green and white. All right, so I've got green and white. I'm going to mix those two together. This will give me a very bright, pretty spring green. And then I've mixed it up, but I want to make sure I taper the brush a little bit before I begin. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of twist the brush into a point. All right, and that will make it a lot easier to work with, especially for these finer details, basically. So I'm going to do what looks like a parentheses, another parentheses, and then just fill that in. Again, that same shape. And you can make some of it a little bit more curvy if you want, and taper them to a little bit of a softer point if you want. Or just keep that shape very simple, again, where it just kind of looks like parentheses, parentheses, and then just fill it in. I did do a quick little sketch here that looks a little bit like a stem with tiny leaves that come out. So I'm going to go ahead and make a little tiny line, and then tiny little leaves that come off of each side. All right, so we have a beautiful start there. Now it is time to do the pattern work over the tops of the roses. So I'm going to be using my little bit brush, that's the smallest brush here, and some white paint. And then I'm going to go ahead and do, this is the fun pattern work that comes in over the top. So basically it kind of looks like you make little parentheses or little half circles, and I just work those in a circular pattern over the top of the rose. And just keep working that in until you work in towards the center, and you basically just kind of run out of room. But again, little like a parentheses, parentheses, or again, half circle, however you want to think about it, that makes it easy for your brain to connect with the motion, and then just work it in towards the center. And I do the same thing here on top of that lavender color. And just sweep it around. So now you can see how they are really starting to emerge as roses at this point. This pattern really helps. Creates that lovely texture of those abstracted petals that come in over the top. All right, next up, we're gonna do one more layer on those roses. You can leave them alone if you like the simple effect. They actually look like roses already, but I like to do one more quick layer of the darkest color next. So I'm gonna do a little pop of this dark purple here, one little spot of a shadow right in the center, and then just a few more little sweeps of that darker shadow of the darker purple. Then I want to do the same thing with the pink, but this time I need to come in with my darkest color being the red. So I'll take my little bit brush, push into that dark red, do a little spot of color right in the center. That's my little shadow right in the middle. And then I'll just do a few more little sweeping strokes of those roses. And I'll just kind of push that around on each side. And then same thing here, a little shadow in the center. And then a few more of those little sweeping shadows of the red. A little bit goes a long way. Right. And we are done with that. Sometimes we change our mind and we go, no, I need a little bit more of a shadow there and here. And all right. So now I think I'm done. Okay. All right, so there we go with that. And then I'm going to do a few more little added touches of the greenery that come in through here. It's a little bit more of the green and the white and the smallest brush. Remember to twist it out. So again, a little twist between our fingertips that'll rotate it into a nice fine point. And then you can do a few more of these that come out. And then just those tiny little leaves on each side. All right, very pretty. All right, next up now we need to do our hard accent lines all the way around this shape. So I will be coming in with my mama brush again. I'm going to be using the line edge. So I'm going to do a hard press here into the black. Push back and forth. All right, see I've got a nice thin line edge there. And so this will help me do this nice edge that goes all the way around. And then again on this side. All right, beautiful. Now we have a little bit more of this hard line edge to do here on this side here, this line. And then I'll do another sketch of a line there, and then there. And I can still see my Sharpie kind of peeking through beautifully in the background here. So then I just go ahead and make another really thin line sketch there. This is for my shiplap here that comes out. All right, and then if you want a little bit of a touch of that accent of wood grain that happens in the background, this is optional. I see a lot of people that leave it just like this, but you can take a small liner brush, and I'm going to go ahead and push it into the black. And then I just make a real light sketch of kind of just a broken, sketchy line that comes out. Kind of looks like a shape of an eye, or think of it like that parentheses there too, but definitely don't try to be too precise about it. Try to almost give your hand a little bit of a shake and make it, look a little bit very imperfect. And then I just kind of keep repeating that same thing on the inside. And then when these are kind of placed randomly, you can kind of spread those out just kind of randomly here and there. And then one more right in the middle. And I'll do one like right here. And then that just kind of gives you that light little hint of wood grain coming in there. And you can do little touches of black, just kind of randomly here and there. If you want to go ahead and add some of that in too. All right, so we've got our little wooden just that old weathered wood look that's coming in through the background. Now we need to go ahead and work in our lettering over the top here where it says family. And I had mapped that out ahead of time with Sharpie and ruler, and made it a lot easier of a process that way. And then you'll see it peeking through, and then you can go ahead and follow along with the brush. Now, since I have chosen a font that has a lot of these very straight lines to it, then I will be using a little buddy brush here. That way it's got a line edge there that I can use. It really helps me out a lot. So I'm going to come back in with the black. Another option here is just to wait for it to completely dry and do a Sharpie too. That's also a really good technique. So I'm going to go ahead and just follow this along. And you have to keep pressing into that paint too. Keep checking your edge, make sure it's nice and thin. So that way you don't get any big blobs of paint. And I'm also using my pinky as a brace here. Helps keep the hand steady, kind of acts as a little, like a training wheel, if you will. Ta-da! And there is our beautiful family painting. She's all done. So she is gorgeous. And again, thank you so much for joining us today. We had a beautiful time painting with you. You can find all the supplies at tipsyartist.com. Look forward to seeing you next time.